now.
Francois is here to speak to us tonight on the subject of police brutality. Frank is a community organizer against police criminality, among other causes, and has been a part of many grassroots organizations such as the new Black Panther Party, Stop Mass Incarceration, Jamaica Cop Watch, CloseRikers.com, and Black Lives Matter.
That's right. Thank you for that gracious introduction. Good evening to everyone here from the Nassau County Green Party. Thank you for having me as we discuss this important issue. But real quick, I'd like to thank you all for giving me that Wilson Pakula last year that allowed me to run for U.S. Congress in Queens. I could not have done that without you guys. All right, so thank you. You said part of Black Lives Matter. I'd like to point out a few things real quick. Black Lives Matter basically was a media creation. It originally was a hashtag and a slogan. It came out from, I forgot the lady's name who first coined the term after Trayvon Martin got killed. But now it is a full-fledged organization with chapters throughout the country. And I do work with Hawk Newsom. Hawk Newsom is the chapter chair of New York City for Black Lives Matter. But the issue is, on one hand, police brutality, which is a part of the whole issue. The bigger issue truly is oppression. This is what the fight is about. This is what the fight is against. It's against oppression. In the 60s, they called it civil rights. Now, it's viewed and called human rights. Inalienable rights that every human being is entitled to. So, we have to ask ourselves, why is it in 2017 that members of this population are still fighting against oppression and fighting for human rights or equal rights and equal opportunities? Why is that? What is it in this society that makes one set of people want to oppress another set of people? Anybody? Anybody can help me here understand?
Because sexism and racism are just so deep in the society that our past 50 or 60 years where we worked didn't eliminate it. We passed laws and we opened shelters and we did everything and we marched, but we didn't really get rid of racism and sexism in America. They're too deeply ingrained.
Okay, that's a good point. Anybody disagree? Anybody agree? As she talks about some of the isms, the schisms of isms, racism and sexism is definitely deeply ingrained in the society.
And homophobia too.
Homophobia, many different divisive things, whereas people view one set of people as lesser than what they are. They are less entitled, you know, because I'm a man, I have to make more money, I need to be the boss. Because I'm white, because I'm black, or because I'm straight, I'm more entitled to this. But it leads me to another question. How did these things become so ingrained in our society? How did racism become so ingrained in America? Anybody? I'll go to you first since he's a guest.
He's your boss.
And he's my boss. And then I'll go to you. Go ahead.
I believe there's a huge financial advantage to racism. I believe any conflict creates...
Hold up, I gotta stop you, man, because you're gonna give it all away.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Any sort of conflict creates an avenue for some sort of revenue. As far as, you know, if you take it back to the days of slavery, you know, originally they were... What happened in Africa was something that started in Europe. So there were white slaves and there were black slaves. We all know that, you know? But for the need for control and the turnover of the revenue, they had to pit one against the other. And that is still what controls our society. I truly believe that it's a brainwashing of the racist white mindset. You know, I think it's a weak mind that brings that in, because, you know, if you really look at it, what's the difference between a guy that lives in the projects over here and the guy living in the trailer park over there? You're both hungry, you're both on food stamps, you're both on welfare. What's the difference between the two of you? So why is there an issue? And when you see these huge protests, you see the big white supremacist groups, you see a lot of, you know, less fortunate white folks. You don't see, you know, you're not seeing Donald Trump on the picket line. You're not seeing a wealthy guy. You're seeing poor, disadvantaged white youths. So you keep ignorance fighting ignorance. And that's the disadvantage that's the advantage that, you know, now, what do we have going on today? We have Make America Great Again, we have, you know, we don't like Muslims, we don't like this, we don't like that. But at the end of the day, when you look and you see a white supremacist guy call another guy the N-word, and then N-word, the guy turns around and decks him and knocks him out. Well, guess what? It's not the guy that said the great speech on TV that got knocked out. It's the poor guy on the streets. Yeah. So that's the first understanding that's needed, that, look, we're on the same freaking boat.
That's right.
Once we understand that,
that's right,
we'll be all right.
That's right.
But that understanding will never be allowed to take place, because what happens if all the disadvantaged turn around and say, well, let's stick together?
Yeah. What did you want to add on to say?
It's not contradicting any of that. It's just in less detail, but I was going to make the point that it's structural rather than just being the result of a bunch of bad people of bad character behaving badly.
Right.
Okay.
That there are structural rewards for this behavior. Just like when you play Monopoly, it's not that some evil people played in such a way that they ended up foreclosing on everyone. That's the rules of the game. If you don't do that, someone else will, and then they're the one that wins the game.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think I would sum up what you're both saying. You said revenue, which equals money. In my definition, I would say that's greed.
Right. Indeed.
Which then translates into classism. We have racism and sexism and all the other schism-isms resulting from mainly classism. And tying in what you said, I would sum up what you said is basically there's a fear that if I don't get it and you have it, I'm not going to have it. And that's one of the tenets of capitalism. That there isn't enough of everything. So it creates a competition. I got to fight with this man for a little piece of meat on this bone. We have to compete with each other. The poor whites have to compete with the middle class and poor blacks. They're afraid that if the blacks get something, then there's going to be less for us. Absolutely. This is all a lie.
Yeah.
It's all a lie, so those who are in power can keep the focus off of them. And I call racist white people stupid. I'm going to give it to you. Y'all, racist white people got to be some of the stupidest people in the world. Because the powers that be got them thinking that the blacks is the reason why you're poor. The Muslims are the terrorists. They coming to get you. The gays want to do this. And they go for it. But we all know the fish stinks from the head first. You want to know who's the problem? Look who's in charge. This is your house, you run the house, there's something wrong in the house. Whose fault is it? The neighbor? Your little son? No, it's you. You. So we have to understand that these things are taught. Racism has been taught so that those on top can have a buffer. But once again, you know, this is capitalistic bullshit. I can curse in the library. This ain't a church, right? I can curse.
Library.
Say what you want here.
Oh, thanks. It's a lie that there's not more than enough of everything. And I ask everybody, who can count the fish that swim in the sea? Who can count the birds that fly in the sky? So I think that's one very important thing that we need to teach everybody as we let them know, listen, there is more than enough of everything for everybody. This world may seem overpopulated with 8 billion people, but all 8 billion people that live on this planet can fit in New York State. When you look on the globe, you see the cities represented by a dot. Because that's how much land there is. And these are the things that, you know, these lies are what keep people at odds. There's a story, right? Mr. Toya will tell you about some resources. The gas and oil is not running out either. The oil company puts that out there. That's one of the tenets of capitalism, supply and demand. Control the supply, increase the demand, increase the profits. You understand? An old African told me one time, this had to be about 1980, going to buy some diamonds. He's like, you're going to spend all that money? And he told me this. He said, those things used to be like rocks. They were everywhere in my home country. We kicked them. Then the De Beers, just give me an example, I'm talking about supply and demand. The De Beers came up with a campaign that said, diamonds are forever. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. So they created the desire for it. And then what they started doing was, they were hoarding the diamonds, they still hoard them, in underground vaults to make it seem like it's scarce. Understand? And have people willing to fight and kill each other. So just tie it back into classism. All of this is classism. It's a fear, it's a greed that the rich want to keep the power and keep, you know, their excess. I'm talking excess. These guys worth 10 billion, 20 billion, 50 billion. Each billion is 1,000 million. You know, and I ask a lot of people like this, we have a president that's worth 10 billion. How the hell could we do that?
That's a lie.
Well, we know he's
not even worth $500 million. And I could have a very long discussion about that with you, and I can tell you all about it.
And you're a financial man, so none of argue your point. That is a financial man. That's my man's F. So you don't think he's worth that much?
Not even close.
How
Not
do
even
you know-
close.
How do you know how much he's worth?
First of all, he refuses to issue his tax returns for
Right.
the last 3 years. So how could you possibly even come up with a number for that? That's number one.
Okay.
Okay.
But we know he's a liar.
He is a liar.
That's number
He is a
two.
liar.
That's a
Says
pretty
he's
strong
10, you know
argument.
he's not 10.
I think he's underestimating. I think he's understating it. I think he's worth more.
No.
No.
He
No,
owes
not
so
close.
much, he borrowed billions to do
Okay.
what he's done.
My cousin sits on the board of Deutsche Bank.
This is why I'm taking. This is why I'm gonna take your word for it.
All right.
I know you're well connected.
And a year and a half ago, just before the campaign cycle, they got a call from someone in his office there if they wanted to place $500 million, which was in a trust, which was more than 2/3 of his net worth at the time.
This is 5 years ago.
This was about 3 years ago.
Okay, 3 years ago.
And they did a verification process of the account, and the account didn't even exist. It was a phantom. It was like calling up and trying to place much
They play
less
those
money
games a
and
lot,
trying to
too.
get. Damn right, he plays a lot of games. Now, in 1987, my father was a 25% owner of the Channon Building, which is on 42nd Street between Lexington and 5th. And it was up for sale. And we had dinner at the Four Seasons restaurant. And he was invited. And he showed up, and he made a ridiculous, ludicrously lowball offer for the building. And everyone just looked at each other and just looked at him and said, "You're out of your fucking mind." And he turned
can't
around
curse
and
in
walked
that
right out. Okay? I don't even think he had the money for it.
Gotcha.
And that primarily covers it, you know. But they did a verification of the account. Didn't even exist. Nevertheless, had to balance it. Okay.
Well,
I don't believe anything.
I got you.
Right. And the only real assets that he has are Mar-a-Lago, which he had paid $28 million for. Okay. He owns that plane, which he claims that he paid $40 million for, which I don't even believe he did. And what are the other assets? Okay, the apartment up in Trump Tower,
The
which
apartment
is
or the whole building?
just the apartment. He doesn't own the building. He doesn't own any part of the building except his own 2 units.
Okay.
Okay, one of the units is for the business, one is for personal,
Okay.
which are probably worth somewhere in the range between $15 and $20 million. Now you add all that up, you probably get 60, 70, maybe $80 million. Okay? He doesn't have anywhere near what he claims he does.
Well, you know what, Seth?
And what about the 5 bankruptcies that he
You know what, Seth?
filed for?
I stand corrected. I like to be taught, and as you're presenting this, what comes to my mind is that oftentimes a lot of cats fake it till they make it.
Absolutely.
They exaggerate their wealth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take your word on it, man. I'm not even gonna do no research and check on that.
I'm telling you.
I'm gonna take your word on it.
All these other buildings in Manhattan that have his name on it, like the Trump Plaza.
That's nice.
They're coming off.
He doesn't even own 1% of that. It's
They're coming off.
he basically leases his name,
He
his
leases
trademark, his name. He gets paid $1 million or $2 million or whatever it is, and that's it. He doesn't get any equity.
Yeah, that's true.
And I played golf up at the the Briarcliff Country Club. This is 3 years ago, and I walked into this beautiful country club. It's all stone, blue stone, very large, probably about 50,000 square feet. And there's a big picture of him as you walk in. It's about this wide.
Is that the one in the Bronx?
No, this is up in Westchester. It's
Oh,
right near
Westchester.
where the bridge is.
Okay.
So in his standard cheap shit suit with that red tie, which makes me sick. Okay, and I had found out that he was a minor contractor and he was paid like $2 million for his name. And so after I found out about that, I stole one of the soap holders from the bathroom and I spit on his photo. With dripping drool all over the photo after I left after the clubhouse. I just had to tell you that.
I hear you, brother.
We're proud of you. We're very proud of you. I hear like
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna take Trump out the billionaire club, right?
Yes.
But my point that I wanted to make was that when you look at these guys, they have more money than they could ever spend, right? $1 billion.
Wait. They're good
No.
friends. They're good friends of the
No,
Koch brothers.
let's not talk about this guy.
No, we're not going to talk about money. The Koch brothers were the largest contributors towards Pence's campaign. So they still remain as the largest contributor, and they still are trying to push the Keystone XL pipeline.
Right.
And furthermore, as a piece of this garbage, I don't even call it a bill, I don't know what you call it, it's this giant scam of theirs, allows drilling up in ANWR, the Alaska National Wildlife Reserve, which I am
we need
in
to
vehement
focus.
opposition.
No, Steph, but this is good. Those are good points because let me make a segue here, right?
Yes.
As we get back to police brutality.
Yes.
All right. Anyone knows the history of the police departments?
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
the Irish immigrants.
yeah, and
Yeah, sure.
an actual, to keep freed slaves in order, right, in the South.
That's South Carolina, right?
Yeah, but basically it was, to preserve, they were used to break up strikes, that kind of thing.
That's England. That's right.
So they had, that's how they began, basically to maintain property relations.
Right. The police department, I don't know, somebody can look it up if they want to know the exact dates and all the statistics. The police departments in London, as one of the first police departments, they were formed to control labor movements and strikes. The police departments in South Carolina was a state that the blacks had a bigger population than the white population there. So they formed police departments there out of the old overseers, to keep the blacks and the poor whites returning from the Civil War in check. And in New York City, it was to deal with the mobs. So it's never been about law enforcement. That's what they call it. It's never been about law enforcement. It's always been about population control. And this is one of the reasons why they are so brutal. They want everyone to fear them. All right? And I myself, I've been a victim of police brutality twice. I was beaten and half to death on Rikers Island, December 6, 1991. I'll never forget the day. And this was by black police. So, by the way, let's just put that out there. You know, when it comes to most people, especially black people in the black community, we don't see police as black or white. They're a ugly color pig blue. They all don't mean us no good. You know, they are the first arm, the first line of oppression in this country. And they are there to keep us down. That is their job, under the guise of what they're saying, law enforcement. But they don't, I mean, unless you have a police in every corner, it's the community that keeps the people safe. It's the community that informs the police who did what. The police don't find out anything basically on their own most of the time, except for finding it out from the community. This is why they have a war on drugs. Hello, how are you?
Hey, Peter.
Peter,
Hello, everyone.
you missed it, Peter.
I missed it. I met you at the posture
Yes, you did.
St. thing.
Yes, you did.
Let me sit down real quick. I'm okay. How you doing?
We're talking about police brutality. You know, the reason behind it, and we touched on the classism and the racism, and I'm segueing it into now, as we're talking about the rich people, you know, how they want to keep us where we're at. That means poor whites and lower middle class whites too. You know, there are a few pieces of a few fish that sometimes slip through the net and make it to the next echelon. I call those the carrots on the stick, because most people that are born poor or lower middle class, they will die so. The mass majority will die so. There are a few that, you know, through hard work and intelligence and being in the right place, we will make it out. But it's designed that way, and the police and police brutality is to help keep the masses of population in check. You know, so those are some of the reasons why I believe police brutality really happens. And then you do have hatred, you do have racism, you do have individual officers who have a vendetta, you understand? But the system itself, not the individuals, is designed to keep the people in check. That's what it really boils down to. You know, you often hear the saying that it's just a few bad apples. That's a damn lie. It's the whole tree with maybe a few good apples, you know, a few law enforcement agents that do want to do their job. I mean, we're seeing what's happening now because of modern technology, and people are sharing it, but it's the way it's always been. But people were considered liars. The cops that beat up Rodney King got off. And that was videotaped. That was videotaped. We've seen that on video. But now we see it every day. And it's not just black people, it's white people. I don't never see it happen to no rich white person. I'm just saying, you know, I've never seen it. Have anybody ever seen a rich white person get beat up by the police? Or get harassed by the police? Should they talk to the police any way they want to? They go, sorry, sir. Sorry.
They get hassled until the police find out they're rich white people.
Right. Yes, exactly.
What about all the bankers that trashed the economy 10 years ago? Not one went to jail, not one.
Well, those are the real criminals.
Those are the real criminals.
Those are, you know, when we
Damn
talk
right
about
those are the real
white crime versus white collar crime versus blue collar crime. I mean, somebody runs up in a gas station and sticks this guy up and takes $2,000, and he affected him and his family. But you know, you get Ivan Boski and Michael Milken, and then, man, they robbing thousands of people. They're affecting thousands of family. And you know, that's another thing as we talk about criminal justice. You know, the laws and the sentencing for, you know, those crimes, they get slaps in the wrist. Scary.